Welcome to another video. In this video, we are going to be taking a look at question 1 of the AS and A level October-November 2020 paper 1, and that is variant 1-3. Okay. And as a side note, please stay on the lookout for other videos because in other videos I will be going through question 2 and question 3 respectively. Okay. So let's get started. Okay, so here for question 1, it's divided in 2 parts for a total of 25 marks. Okay, and the first part is asking us to comment on the language and style of the text. And then in part B, the instructions are as follow. Imagine you are a member of staff on the Belmont and Dean Explorer. You write a weekly blog about your experiences aboard the train, basing your writing closely on the material of the original text and using 120 to 150 of your own words, write a section of your blog. Okay, so what we will be doing is we will be starting, of course, with part A, and I will read the text with you, and then as we read, I will pause and I will analyze the language and the style that the author uses. Okay, so let's start with the title. All aboard one of the highest train routes in the world. Okay, so this title already, I think, would give the reader a good insight on what the text is about, right? So here, by the way, I'm commenting as well on the effect that the style and the language has on us readers. So here with the title, just by reading this, you can tell that the text, of course, will be about a specific train route, and that happens to be one of the highest in the world. Okay, and then also this part of the title that says all aboard, right? All aboard. I feel like it gives the effect to the readers that they are participating in this experience. So the reader would be, by reading this, the reader could assume that there are going to be really good details about the experience to the point that they would feel like they were a part of it. Okay, so now moving on. It's 2 a.m. and there's a loud metallic clank outside my train cabin. Okay, so here, this first sentence, right, that is also the first paragraph, technically, it's very suspenseful. So just by reading this, the reader thinks, oh, it's 2 a.m., there's something loud, it's metallic, was it an accident, what's going on? So there's a lot of questions that comes into the reader's mind, and this is a pretty good tactic for capturing their attention, so captivating them from the start. Okay, and then moving on, the author says, I'd be alarmed, but I already know what it is. Oxygen tanks. Okay, so right here, there's the counter to the suspense. So the questions are gone right away. Okay, because at first there's a loud noise, a metallic one, what's going on? And then the reader goes ahead and reads the second sentence. And right there, the questions are gone. And the writer kills the suspense right away. Okay, by saying oxygen tanks. So that's the effect that the first sentence of the second paragraph has. The onboard nurse, Mary, is hauling them from room to room, filling the lungs of those travelers who are finding the crushing headaches and abject dizziness that comes with altitude sickness a bit too much to handle at this time of night. We are 13,000 feet up in the high Andes. Okay, so over here we see that these oxygen tanks are actually used for people who have trouble and who experience altitude sickness, right? And they need help to have some good oxygens to sleep through the night, right at this time of night. So here, the writer makes it clear that it's nighttime and that people are having trouble breathing at night, which must be very uncomfortable. Okay, and then right after the effect is even stronger because the writer goes with the stats, right? 13,000 feet up. That's very high. So I could imagine the discomfort. And also, here, the fact that the writer is very specific about some of the passengers needing oxygen tanks, you can also think about when you're sick, right? If you had a cold or a flu before, maybe it's just me, but maybe you've noticed too that at night things just get worse for some reason. Like if you're sick, usually you're like more okay during the day, and then after at night, for some reason, it's like horrible. So here I think that the reader can also kind of get a good idea of when you're like already with a cold or flu, you have a hard time making it through nights, and then now imagine needing oxygen tanks. Like that's pretty serious, right? And then also the writer specifies that there's symptoms of dizziness and headaches, right? Crushing headaches. It's pretty, the emphasis is there, crushing, using that adjective. So it really has that, it really adds that weight of how uncomfortable it must be. Okay. And then we move on to the third paragraph. At this elevation, skittish llamas are preyed on by elusive mountain lions, and giant condors glide effortlessly on thermals. Even in the middle of the night, the thought of what might be just outside my window is exhilarating. Okay, so here the writer's being very descriptive about his or her surrounding. Okay, I'll just sometimes say him or his, just so I don't have to say the writer all the time. Okay, but I do want to specify that we don't know the gender. Okay, so the writer is describing their surroundings. And here the writer also makes it very clear that for him, right, the middle of the night, usually people use that time to sleep, right? But he's very excited to be on this train. So he doesn't want to sleep, right? He's excited to see what's behind that window. Okay, so we have that tone of excitement over here. I boarded the Belmont Andean Explorer at a tiny restored station just outside of Arequipa, Peru's second largest city. Under the cloak of darkness and to a fanfare of jaunty panpipes, I entered the liveried carriages, moonlight bouncing off their midnight blue and brass exterior. Okay, so here again, the writer is being descriptive, but in the third paragraph, the writer was being descriptive about his surroundings, and then over here in the fourth, we kind of take it back, so it's retrospective, right? So we go slightly back in time when the writer was boarding the train, and here through the use of metaphor, the cloak of darkness. So the cloak of darkness here, the writer is comparing the nighttime to kind of like a cover of darkness that covers the sun, so things go dark, right? So we have a metaphor here. If you can see it, we have a metaphor here. And to a fanfare of jaunty panpipes, I entered the liveried carriages, moonlight bouncing off their midnight blue and brass exterior. So here the word brass is used to describe a color, so that copper, yellow, metal-like color. Okay, so here we have this whole entire sentence is actually two figures of speech mixed in one sentence. So we have the metaphor, and then we also have imagery. The whole sentence is imagery because it's very descriptive. Okay, almost poetic. Okay, and moving on, the journey from Arequipa to Cusco, the former capital of the Incan Empire. So we have a passing comment, right, using dashes. Would take almost 3 days, winding through craggy canyons and vertiginous mountain paths, climbing to a staggering 14,000 feet, an altitude that can floor some Olympic athletes. Okay, so here are part of the style. We have passing comment using dash to make a to add something, to just have like a side note there. Okay, and what else do we have? So an altitude that can floor some Olympic athletes. So here we have personification. Okay, it's because floor here is a verb, and what floor means, like if you tell someone, hey, I'm going to floor you, right? It means you can, sometimes, you know, it means you can knock them out, right? So there's two, there's I think more than one meaning to this word. Okay, in this context, it's used as it can knock out some Olympic athletes. Okay, and just this is a side note. If someone says a floor, it could also mean you shock someone so much that you know, shocking news that you can just make them hit the floor, like faint, or you know, if you get really bad news that can floor you, right? You just faint. But anyway, in this context, it means knockout, right? So reaching a staggering, again, we go in with that adjective to really give that emphasis of how high the altitude is. So 14,000, which is 1,000 higher than that 13 that we had up here. Okay, and here another thing that I want to note in regards to this personification, right? And by the way, it's a personification because an altitude is not a person that can physically knock you out. So that's why it's a personification in this context. And also there's that emphasis, I guess you could argue hyperbole, Olympic athletes. Okay, the fact that the writer used the term Olympic athletes, really, he's trying to really stress the fact that even the top, healthiest, you know, people who train like crazy could get knocked out by this altitude. So it means that the average person, you should probably be worried. Okay, so that's the effect that it has on the reader. The reader, by reading this, you would be like, well, okay, so if it could knock out an Olympic athlete, then what could it do to me, right? Then there's no way I can, you know, I can stand and you know, if it's gonna floor an Olympic athlete, it's definitely gonna floor me. Okay, moving on. Inside the train, which used to barrel along Australia's east coast before it was shipped across the Pacific to be refurbished by Peru Rail, comprises 24 cabins, a piano bar, 2 dining carts, and a soon-to-be added spa carriage. Okay, so again, the style of the passing comment. And notice how the writer's being very descriptive about the inside of the train, right? Over here, we had the exterior that the writer described, and now we're going more towards the inside of the train. Okay, and what effect does this have? Again, we have imagery because the writer's being very descriptive, and we'll see that in the next paragraph. So by reading, the reader can really visualize the train in their head. Okay. The decor is, of course, luxurious. Brass luggage. So again, we have that word, brass, that copper yellow. Brass luggage racks, Art Nouveau detailing, and creamy leather, topped with locally inspired dangly pom-poms and neon rainbow textiles. Cabins come in 4 denominations, from bunk bed rooms to deluxe cabins, all with bijou, parquet floored bathrooms. Okay, so here, much more descriptive again. So we had an overview of the interior of the train, and then now the writer goes even more into details. Okay, and what effect does this have? So again, we go a step deeper in the description, so the reader can really visualize themselves there. And also another thing to note is, remember that this text was taken from a newspaper article. Okay, so remember, this is a newspaper article, so who knows, maybe the writer is also trying to also implicitly persuade people to build an interest to travel to Peru and to take that train, right? Maybe it's an advertisement through the article, right? We never know. So what makes me think so is, as a reader, right, if you see that cabins come in 4 denominations, you have I guess this would be economy class. So from bunk bed rooms, right? So bunk bed rooms, it's pretty simple rooms. So we could assume here that it's not expensive, right? To deluxe cabins, okay? And I wouldn't say, I think figure of speech, you could maybe argue a euphemism here, but I'm not too sure, honestly. But, I would say, 4 denominations, from quote unquote low class to a very high class, right? You have like first class and then the lower classes, which is just bunk beds, right? But here the writer doesn't say explicitly, like, you have like peasant rooms and like rich people rooms, right? You always have to bring it in like a softer form. So arguably a euphemism here. I don't know, you can be the judge of that. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Okay, but if you're a reader, you could say there's variety. So whether I have a lot of money, right, I can afford this, and if I don't have a really large budget, I can also find a place in the bunk bed rooms and still get to experience something pretty cool. Okay, so that's the effect that we have here. Okay. On board, I spend mornings and evenings being attended to by the train's 50 staff, a perky professional lot who wear quirky uniforms and serve up intriguing local dishes, from river trout ceviche to alpaca tortellini. Excuse me. All washed down with lashings of coca tea, which helps ward off altitude sickness or soroche. Okay, so again with the passing comment. Okay, and here I feel like it's a little special, this passing comment, because there's a nested passing comment. So here you notice in the parentheses, right? It's a passing comment inside a passing comment. So I found that pretty interesting. The writer, usually it's not too it's not too common that writers do this. Okay, so it's pretty unique here. Okay, and again, very detailed with the description. The writer talks about being attended to by the train's 50 staff. So here we again have the facts, right? There's 50 of them. And then the writer goes deeper into the details of how they're dressed and what they serve, right? And then we get introduced to this coca tea, which supposedly helps with altitude sickness. That is also called soroche, probably in the native language of Peru. My first night's sleep on board is, let's say, fitful. As well as stonking headaches, soroche causes dehydration, and, as I realize in the small hours when I go to the bathroom for yet more water, disconcertingly blue lips. Still, there's something intrepid about being in the mountains in the darkness, so I make a point of sleeping with the blinds open. Okay, so here there's kind of a contradiction, a paradox, two different tones in one same paragraph. Okay, so in the first half of the paragraph, here the first sentence, the writer says that his sleep is it's probably not too comfortable, right? Very agitated, so fitful. Okay, he explains that he has the headaches, so he has the symptoms of the altitude sickness. Okay, so stonking headaches, dehydration, right? We again have soroche here. This the synonym, not synonym, but the word, the other word for altitude sickness in a different language. Okay, so it causes dehydration and also blue lips, right? So the writer here is you have that not too joyful tone, right? It's unpleasant, it's uncomfortable to feel these symptoms. Okay, and then right after the writer goes to say, but there's something that's just so like great and cool about being in the mountains in the darkness, so I make a point of sleeping with the blinds open. So despite being really pained by this soroche, by this altitude sickness, the writer is still focused on, enjoying the experience and seeing what's outside and enjoying the scenery, the mountains, right, the view. So this dual tone here can reassure the reader as that the effect that it has on the reader is that wow, like, there is that kind of bad side, but the reader is reassured because even though you're going through, if you were there, like the writer was, you're going through these unpleasant things, but it's all worth it because the experience is just so great. The view, being in the mountains, right? So that's the effect that it has here. Okay. At around 3 a.m., I stir from sleep and I'm greeted by a magical vista. As high winds whip soft billows of snow around the inky outlines of white-capped mountains, presided over by a dense blanket of stars. It feels like a dream. Okay, so here we have the writer again commenting on the scenery, the vista. Okay, and the writer takes it a step, not a step further, but the writer takes it upon himself to say it feels like a dream, right? So after all the pretty lengthy description, the writer sums it up as to be comparable to a dream. It's just so beautiful. It's like a dream, right? And we have another metaphor here, dense blanket of stars. Okay, so the writer is comparing the amount of scars the amount of stars in the sky like a huge dense blanket. So you can imagine if you live like in a city, right? If you live in a city, there's pretty much no stars, you know, because of this pollution. But if you live in a city, you know, when you look outside at night, you don't see much stars. Okay. But if you live in like a place that's less crowded outside in suburban areas, then you can probably see more stars. And then the writer here says that what he saw was a dense blanket of stars. So on the reader, the effect would be that, like, wow, like, just imagine the sky like completely clear and you can see like all of the stars, and it's, you know, it must be so beautiful, right? So that's why the writer says it feels like a dream. So that metaphor really helps the reader visualize as well the beauty. Okay. And also the word here, magical, the adjective. So it adds that emphasis. Okay. And then now, this paragraph, the train snakes lazily alongside the top end of the Amazon River as it rumbles towards Cusco. While the Andean explorer is undeniably luxurious, really, the best thing about it won't cost a thing, the view. So here again we have the metaphor, the train snakes. Okay, so the train, this metaphor really helps the reader understand the movement, right? So it helps describe the movement of the train, right? So in your head you can imagine it like just going left and then right, like a snake in the grass. Okay, so it's pretty cool, right? And over here, what I noted is that the writer, so the writer's style, it's he uses colons to introduce a specific item. Okay, so the view, he did it many times throughout the text. So in this case, we're talking about the view. Really, the best thing about it won't cost a thing. So the best thing about the experience is actually free, which is the view. Okay, and if we look a little more up in this text, we have this again. No, sorry, not here. We have it over here at the beginning. I already know what it is. Oxygen tanks. Okay, so here it was again just to introduce a specific item. So the colon was used to introduce a specific item twice. Okay, up there and over here. And then in the middle, we have a series of items. Okay, the decor is, of course, luxurious. And then there's an enumeration of items. Okay, so here one thing that you could say, I guess, overall, when you're writing your answers, that the style that the writer does use colons to introduce items. Okay, and the other way that usually colons are used is to maybe add on to a sentence, right? Or I'm trying to think of a specific example. If I was to say, I really can't think of. I put myself on the spot. Sorry, I can't think of something right now, but I'll leave it down in the description below. A good example. Okay. Now onto the last paragraph. the best way to take it all in is just to stand in the breeze on the observation deck as the train winds through the Andean paths, past fast-flowing rivers, soaring eagles, and snow-topped mountain peaks shining in the sun. There really is no better way to travel. Okay, so again, with the metaphor, right, as the train winds through the Andean paths. So here, it's to describe the movement again. So just like up here, we're describing the movement, the writer's describing the movement again. So the train winds, right? It's going fast like the wind. So there's a comparison with the wind there. Okay. And in the end, notice that there's a short sentence to make the point. So there really is no better way to travel. Same effect here for the short sentence. It feels like a dream. So it's really to make a point. It's very powerful. And it also works really nicely because if you notice, the writer makes use of small paragraphs. If you look, all the paragraphs are pretty small. Okay? They're short. So I think if you count, each paragraph is consisted of 2 sentences or even one, like the one up here, right? And the sentences are long or medium length. Like this is medium, I would say. This one is really long, right? And then over here we have a medium one. So it really stands out to the reader when the writer uses a short sentence, because when the reader is reading, right, the text, the sentences are medium and long, right, and it's easy to get into that flow of having long or medium length sentences. So when the reader stumbles upon a short one, it really stands out, right? It feels like a dream, like it stands out, and it's to make a point, and that's the effect. That's what the writer's trying to do, is really make a heavy point with those short sentences. Okay, and let's take a look. So now we're done reading, right? And we kind of went through the effects that each sentence, each paragraph really has on us, the readers. Okay, but then we could also take a look at more global things that I've noticed about this text and how they affect us, the readers. Okay, and we'll start. I made notes over here. So the tone and the attitude overall, it's very conversational, lively, and descriptive. Okay, conversational because conversational because of the contractions here. It's I'd, we're, right? There's that informality there. And I find that things flow as if the writer, is I don't know, on the phone or in person talking to you. I get that feel of it being very conversational. Okay, and it's slightly informal because of the contractions. Okay, the sentences, we talked about it, long, medium, and a few short ones. Okay, so we just talked about that one. The short ones really stand out. Grammatical person, we have first and third. Okay, but the dominant one is first. So let's focus on that one. So first, a grammatical person, the writer uses I, right? It's the writer's story, it's the writer's experience. So what effect does it have on the reader? The fact that this experience is written in first person, it adds on to the trust and the credibility of the writer. Okay, because if the writer, imagine over here, the writer, when the writer's talking about the oxygen tanks and people feeling when people are feeling sick from that altitude sickness, right? If it wasn't in first person, then it would be less, it would feel less personal, right? I don't think that as a reader I would be as like indulging into the story, because the writer's telling somebody else's story. But there's that different feeling when the person is specifically talking about what they've experienced. You kind of, how can I say this? You, as a reader, you're more compelled to like feel that empathy for them, and to, because it's their own story. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense, and you understand what I'm trying to say like that. But the first grammatical person here is it definitely brings out that empathy, and that feeling, that connection you have with the writer as a reader. Okay. For the vocabulary, okay, I noticed that the writer uses a lot of low frequency words, okay? And what does low frequency mean? It's a word that you don't usually use day to day, right? And then just basic common English, right? Like skittish, exhilarating. These are the ones that I've highlighted. Liveried, jaunty, staggering. There's really a lot. Fitful, stonking, intrepid. I struggle to pronounce this. So yeah, the writer uses a lot of low frequency words, and the effect that it has for me as a reader is personally that you can tell that the writer has a certain experience with how can I put this? Sorry, I'm struggling to find my words right now. It really, the effect that it has on the reader is that the writer is very inexperienced, right? Is an experienced writer, right? Has a pretty extensive vocabulary, okay? And, oh, it also makes sense because, remember, this is a newspaper article. So people who get hired to write for newspapers are usually very, very good writers who can, manage a wide variety of words and use them properly. Okay. Another thing I've noticed about the vocabulary, we talked about it, contractions, right? I'd, let's, there's, won't. There's a few of them that I pointed out that I've highlighted. Oh, underlined, rather. That I've underlined. And it's interesting because the fact that the writer's using contractions, right, that's informal. It's informal in academic writing, but also the writer is using low frequency words, right? So that's a little bit contradicting because we have that informal side of the of the text, but then after it's pretty formal, right? What might be just outside my window was exhilarating. He could have just used exciting or more of a high frequency word than an average person would understand, right? So it's kind of interesting here to see that there's a clash. There's informal use of informal methods, and then you have very formal words that are used. Okay. The audience. So the audience, I would say, is a general public, right? Whoever would purchase that newspaper. So we don't know the name of the newspaper. So we can't really tell if the newspaper itself targets a subset of the population, right, of their region, or Yeah, so that's why I say general public, right? The newspaper. Or travelers, right? The audience, I would say, is for travelers, whether experienced or non experienced, right? That's up for debate. But I think definitely a traveler, because again, with the amount of description, I feel like maybe implicitly this could be some sort of advertisement. Okay? And then let's talk a little bit about the rhetorics. So we have logos, okay? So logos related, so that is logic, right? Facts and stats. And over here we have the numbers that the writer used explicitly, right? And so he knew exactly how high the train was and when, okay? And also I noted paragraph 6. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This one here, yeah, 24 cabins, right? So the writer knows exactly, probably maybe did his research, right? Exactly the amount of cabins, 2 dining cars, so really detailed, right? A piano bar, 2 dining cars, and even a soon to be added spa carriage. So the writer even knows about things that are yet to be a part of the train, right? And then also describing the decor, right? That's even more detailed. The writer was also describing the staff members, the amount of staff members and their uniforms, or the food that's served, right? So the writer is stating a lot of facts, right? Even in regards to facts about the train, right? The train, which used to barrel along Australia's east coast. So even deep, like history, right, regarding the train. The writer even knows facts about Peru, right? Just outside of Arequipa, Peru's second largest city. That's pretty much very detailed. The writer even knows details about the surroundings, right? The llamas that are preyed on by mountain lions, right? So the type of animals that are in the surroundings. So here, throughout the text, the writer really makes use of logos. So they gain that trust, because when you read, you feel like with their vocabulary, the writer really knows what they're talking about. So there's that trust, right? That's the effect that it has on the reader by stating all these facts and being very specific. The writer, it gives you the impression that the writer is knowledgeable and that you can trust their words or what they're saying. Okay? And we also have ethos, authority, credibility. Okay? Experienced traveler. That's what I'm assuming. I get the impression that the writer is an experienced traveler. So here, when we get to this part, okay, now actually let's start at the top. When the writer is talking about some people needing oxygen tanks, right? So the reader might tell themselves, oh, like, maybe wow, like they have altitude sickness, they're a little bit weak, maybe, And then when we fast forward to near the end, the writer says that his night was a little bit fitful, and that he was subject to that altitude sickness. Then you might think, as a reader, that, oh, okay, so the writer was struggling, so maybe the writer is a part of that group of people that's, pretty like on the weaker side. But then when we go back to this paragraph here, we remember that the writer said that, hey, this altitude can actually floor some Olympic athletes. So then all of those maybe negative thoughts, if we could say, about the people needing oxygen tanks really disappears, because the average person would get the altitude sickness. Even the best, the best of us, the Olympic athletes, probably would get it too. So, anyway, the writer has the credibility is there. Okay, credibility is there, so we have that ethos of a feeling that the writer's someone who loves traveling and who's an experienced traveler. Again, the credibility is there when the writer says that even though here in the when I was talking about the contradiction in tones, even though the writer was feeling that altitude sickness, he still wanted to look outside and enjoy things. So, I feel like if the average person who's not really a traveler and used to like going on crazy adventures, you would probably just lay down for the rest of the trip and just it would be over everything and not really care about the mountains. You'd be like, I'm just sick and I just want to go home, right? So the credibility is there as a traveler, okay? Or somebody, maybe not even just somebody who likes adventure. So that is what I have for you for our part A. Okay. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions or comments. If there's anything you feel like I should improve, if there's anything that you disagree with. Okay. And for part B, okay, imagine you are a member of staff on the Belmont Indian Explorer. Okay, and we have to write a section of the blog, 120 to 150 words, about experiences aboard the train. Okay, so here one thing that I want to note, write a section of your blog. Remember here a section means not only you do not write the whole entire blog, just a section. And that section can be the beginning, the middle, or the end. It's up to you, right? Section. Here, I'll show you a little sample of an answer because I didn't have the time to write a full one for you today. Okay. Oh, by the way, sorry. Let's just jump back to A. Here I had in blue the first person, grammatical first person, ethos. The fact that the writer is speaking in first person really builds on that credibility because the writer experienced this firsthand. Okay. Side note. Okay, let's go back to my sample. So we're writing about the experience on the train as a staff member. And remember, the instructions state that we must base the writing close on the style and the language of the original text. Okay, so what I started, just a little sample here, I started with, at the beginning, my first week as a staff member of the Belmont Indian Explorer, parentheses, Bay, just came to an end, and I can sum it up in a single word, majestical. Okay, so here, basing my writing close on the text, again, I just copy the writer by using the colon to state one specific item. So here, what the writer does here. Okay, so I just took that style there and I added my own statement, right? So the week just came to an end, then it's majestical. Okay, and I took I took the word magical and just got a synonym. Okay, majestical. I knew that I would be granted a front row seat to majestical vistas. Sorry. And by the way, here I think that you should actually use a different word. Okay, like if I had to clean this up, I wouldn't use majestical twice. Okay, so I suggest that you try to have a variety of words, right? Use them wisely. Okay, so majestical vistas, and vistas, I took it from the text directly. Okay. However, I underestimated the beauty of it all. It's stupefying. Okay. So again, here what I did is I made use of medium length long sentences, and then I added a short one just to, make that power statement, just like the author does in his text, right? Long sentence and then a short one to make a point. So that's what I did, and then you would just continue, right? And my biggest tip for part B is to really look at the content and try to build on what's already there. You could even take a few words, rearrange them, and just kind of take what's already here and rearrange the stuff to make it your own, right? But I think also you can extract some information, right? You could talk about where you boarded, right? Did you board the same place or maybe a different place? And you could also talk about the coca tea and what's being served and the oxygen tanks. And also, since you're a staff member, right, the writer was talking about people needing that oxygen. Maybe you could talk about the funny experiences that you've had when you were giving people the oxygen, or somebody fainted, or like you could really get creative with this. Okay, so that's my advice. Okay, and actually that will be it for our question one. I really hope that this was useful for you. Let me know in the comment section what you think. I'm always all ears for some feedback, positive or negative. As long as it's constructive, I'm okay. And if you find it helpful, please like the content. There's more coming. Make sure you're subscribed and you have the bell notification turned on. Okay, but that's it. And I, of course, hope that you have a beautiful day or beautiful night, depending on where you are located in the world. Okay, and I'll talk to you soon.